Self-love. Self-love. Let's talk about self-love a little bit. First thing I want to mention about it is if you start with the belief something is wrong with you, you'll skip past the best stuff God has put inside of you. Listen to that again. If you start with the belief something is wrong with you, you'll skip past the best stuff God has put inside of you. A lot of us are struggling with self-love. But I think there's more than one part to self-love. I think there's another part which is self-worth. So is self-love and self-worth the same thing? Is self-love and self-worth the same thing? Because if you start with the belief something is wrong with you, you'll skip past the best stuff God has put inside of you. Think about that. You'll skip past all the best stuff God has put inside of you because you're too focused on the things that are wrong with you or that you think are wrong with you. So is self-worth and self-love the same thing? First part is worth. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the worth has to do with the way that we were raised, the way that we were conditioned, the things that somebody told us at some point in our life. Maybe it was when we were young, maybe it was when we were teenagers, maybe it's when we were older, maybe it was just the other day. A lot of it has to do with what somebody had told us, and a lot to do with this world and what the world tells us. Not based on God and what God tells us. So a lot of our self-worth is based off of the world and what the world tells us, and not based off of God and what God tells us. God says He loves you. God says He wants a relationship with you. God says He made you in His image. God thinks you're perfect. He actually gave His Son for every single imperfection you have. For every single imperfection that you have, He gave His Son. He allowed His Son to die for every imperfection that you have. That's how much He loves you. That's how special He thinks you are. So going back, if you start with the belief something is wrong with you, you'll skip past the best stuff God has put inside of you. That's deep. That's good. So what about the second part of that? Is self-worth and self-love the same thing? So I think self-worth is a lot based off of our conditioning, based off of what this world has told us. Maybe you were young. Maybe somebody had told you something. Like I said, maybe teenagers, some point in your life. Maybe it's today. But what about self-love? Some people hold self-worth, but it's hard for them to have the self-love. It's easy to have the self-worth for some people, but it's hard for them to have the self-love. And for others, it's hard to have the self-love, but they have some self-worth. Maybe the worth was somebody telling them how important they were, how special they were, how great they were. It's easy to see the worth sometimes, but to find the love is completely different. Self-love was with super high expectations or no expectations could be detrimental to oneself or trying to figure out how to love oneself. Why would that be? With super high expectations, everybody's always told you your whole life how great you are. You've always succeeded, especially maybe, let's say when you were young, you did super great things. You were amazing. You were outstanding. Everything you did was above par, above par, above par. Always the best, always the top notch. Because that's what you do. You're a top performer, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we struggle with the self-love. Why? Because on one end, everyone expects greatness. There's never a ceiling. The bar just gets higher and higher and higher, and eventually somebody else comes along. Or something happens. And then what happens at that point? everything that you base your value off of. A lot of times our net worth is what we base our self-worth, our self-love off of. How much others love us is how much we love ourselves. How much others love us is sometimes how much we love ourselves. And when you reach a certain maybe age, a certain ceiling, a certain point in life, a certain season, you sit and realize, why do I feel so empty? Why do I feel so empty? I've done this, I've been here, I've done that, I've seen this. But why do I feel so empty? See, God already knew. God already knows. He knew that you'd be sad. He knew that you'd be lonely. He knew that that person would leave you alone or betray you or do those things to you. He knew. But he still loves you. He still loves you. See, God, he wants to use you. Wants to use you. Just like you are. Broken, sad, empty. Whatever it is. Maybe you're full right now. That's fine. That's good. But what are you filled with? We need to change the way we think about our worth and our love. If you start with the belief something is wrong with you, you'll skip past the best stuff God has put inside of you. Those broken pieces, those imperfections. Everything you think is wrong with you. Everything you think isn't as good as somebody else's. Maybe you need to start comparing yourself to yourself. Because God has put something special inside of you. If we start with the belief something is wrong with you, you'll skip past the best stuff God has put inside of you. Just realize God has made you perfect the way you are. Have you ever known a person that was so amazing you didn't recognize anything about except the amazingness of that person? Not their hair, not their shoes, not their weight, none of that stuff, just the things that they're doing, their actions. How about getting jealous of a person who has less? A poor person with lots of family but lots of love. Not that much money but lots of family and lots of love. Why would you get jealous? Because sometimes they're rich in the spirit. Working with what God gave them. Working with what God gave them. What God puts inside of you is so amazing and so beautiful, the world deserves to see it. Let me say that again. What God has put inside of you is so amazing and so beautiful. Yes, I'm talking to you. What God has put inside of you is so amazing and so beautiful, the world deserves to see it. The world deserves to see it. They deserve to see your gift. They deserve to see what God has given you. What God has put inside of you is so amazing, so beautiful, the world deserves to see it. There's only one you, only one person with your story, with your skills, with your love, with your heart. Only one person. There's only one person with your story, your skills, your love, your heart. One person. One person. There's only one person with your story, your skills, and your heart. That person's you. That person's you.